The girl was being harassed in the train car. The person harassing her moved closer, and the entire car seemed to fall silent. No one stood up to help. At that moment, a rough-looking man with an unappealing appearance stood up. He grabbed the harasser's hand and forcefully stopped him. Rinko was finally freed. She lifted her head and looked at Takeo with grateful eyes. In that moment, Takeo's heart skipped a beat. When the train reached the station, they escorted the harasser to the police station. However, not only did he deny his actions, but he also accused Takeo of assaulting him on the subway. At the crucial moment, Rinko stepped forward and explained everything clearly. The truth was finally revealed.
そんな短いスカート履いててよく言うな。本当は触って欲しかったんだろ。バカなこと言うな、この男のクズ。
However, Takeo never expected the consequences of his actions at the police station to be so severe. He was suspended from school for a week and had to stay at home every day. Luckily, Takeo's friends always kept him company. After school, they would bring him class notes so he wouldn't fall too behind. One afternoon, Takeo's mother suddenly burst into the room, her tone filled with disbelief. She told them that a girl named Rinko was at the door, wanting to visit. Takeo was confused, unable to recall anyone by that name. But his friends immediately reminded him that no matter whether he knew her or not, with how messy his room was, Rinko's first impression would certainly be awful. Takeo quickly began tidying up, but before he could finish, Rinko walked in. When Takeo saw her face, he froze. It was the same girl he had saved on the subway that day. Takeo's heart started racing. His friends, sensing something, quickly made their exit, saying their goodbyes. But Rinko gently grabbed the corner of their clothes. This moment sank Takeo's heart. He almost immediately concluded that Rinko wasn't interested in him, but in his well-liked and handsome friend. This was a scenario he knew all too well. Every girl he had ever liked growing up eventually confessed to his friend. Rinko then took out a cake and said she wanted to thank him for saving her that day. Takeo pushed aside his disappointment and turned it into appetite, finishing most of the cake on his own. His friends set down their teacups, ready to leave, and Rinko followed them out. Takeo watched her retreating figure, his mind replaying the events of that day. He had been the one to step up and save her, and he had gotten into trouble because of it. Yet, reality seemed to mock his existence. He sighed, comforting himself that at least he hadn't lost anything and had saved a kind girl. Perhaps one day, when his friend succeeded, Takeo would get to attend a wedding. As for his own feelings, he would just have to put them aside again. Sitting alone at the table, Takeo was in deep thought when he suddenly heard a noise under the table. Looking down, he saw a strange pink phone. He instinctively thought it was his friend's, even wondering when his friend had developed such a taste. But when he answered the phone, he realized it was the phone Rinko had accidentally left behind. Rinko called to arrange a meeting the next day in the small park to retrieve her phone. Takeo, once again, misunderstood. He assumed that Rinko was only approaching him to get closer to his friend. So, he made up his mind to create opportunities for them to spend time together. At the agreed meeting spot, Takeo made an excuse to leave, going to the bathroom to calm himself. He kept telling himself that he wasn't suited for Rinko. However, when Rinko saw Takeo's shirt drenched with water, she immediately took out a towel and carefully wiped it off. This made Takeo more certain that Rinko was a gentle person who shouldn't miss out on true happiness because of him. So, he impulsively told her that he loved the cake and hoped she would make it again next time. Rinko was visibly happy and immediately set a time for their next meeting. She even turned back to wave goodbye several times before leaving. His friend noticed this and meaningfully reminded Takeo to cherish such a rare girl. Takeo was taken aback by this, as it was the first time his friend had spoken so seriously about someone. This only made Takeo more convinced that his friend had feelings for Rinko. Just then, Rinko suddenly returned. She rushed up to Takeo, breathless, saying she had forgotten something important. She didn't have Takeo's contact information. Seeing Rinko all sweaty, Takeo instinctively handed her a handkerchief and quickly wrote down his contact information on a piece of paper, handing it to her. The next morning, Rinko sent him a brightly colored email filled with flirtatious undertones. She said the cake was ready and asked if Takeo could meet her in the park after school. Takeo didn't think much of it and immediately agreed. Of course, he didn't forget to invite his good friend along. When they met in the evening, Rinko smiled as soon as she saw Takeo. But when her gaze shifted to his friend, her expression visibly darkened. Takeo's friend, understanding the situation, took the initiative to get up and buy drinks, clearly intending to give Takeo and Rinko some private time. However, to everyone's surprise, Takeo began praising his friend in front of Rinko. He complimented his friend's looks, personality, and academic performance, even emphasizing that his friend was still single. Not long after, his friend returned with the drinks. Looking at the two standing together, Takeo smiled with satisfaction, as if he were a father watching his child grow up. On the way home, the setting sun stretched their shadows. Rinko subtly expressed her feelings again, saying she would like to bake a cake for Takeo next time. However, Takeo made an unexpected move. He urged his friend to leave his contact information with Rinko so they could get closer. Just then, a heavy steel bar fell from above, heading straight for Rinko's head. At that critical moment, Takeo dashed out like an arrow, using his own body to block the steel bar. Despite the pain and trembling, he never let go, and Rinko was saved. With his friend's help, Takeo slowly stepped back. But it was in this moment that Takeo realized his instinctive reaction had been to block the danger with his body, not to protect Rinko in his arms. He knew then that he would never be the prince in a fairy tale. As long as Rinko could be happy with his friend, Takeo felt his life would have no regrets. Just as Takeo's strength was about to give out, he felt the pressure on him lessen. His friend had called for help. Behind them, Rinko blushed as she joined in to help, pushing with all her might. Takeo, seeing what Rinko was willing to do for him, felt as if all his potential had been unlocked. With a powerful thrust, he managed to lift the several tons of steel bar off him. The three of them were finally saved. Takeo's face was scratched, and Rinko, flustered, searched her bag for a band-aid, carefully placing it on his face. In that moment, the air itself seemed to soften. That evening, Rinko called again, this time with a box of sweets she had made to thank Takeo. She hoped to meet him alone without any friends. Takeo, mistakenly thinking she just felt awkward talking about relationships in front of others, immediately agreed. The next day, Rinko had dressed up carefully, and Takeo quickly devoured the French savory cookie she had made. Rinko then kindly offered him hot tea, saying she also wanted to be as considerate as his friend. This comment lit Takeo's passion. He again praised his friend without hesitation, emphasizing that his friend was devoted, handsome, and smart, and still single. Just as Takeo was lost in his own admiration for his friend, Rinko suddenly started crying and ran off, leaving Takeo confused. He hurried to his friend for an explanation, wondering why Rinko seemed to fall apart every time he mentioned his friend. In Takeo's mind, it was only natural for Rinko to like his friend, but his friend gave a completely different judgment. He believed that Rinko had liked Takeo from the very beginning. Despite all the explanations, Takeo still denied it, continuing to praise his friend. His friend, almost embarrassed, eventually revealed the truth. When Takeo had gone to the bathroom to calm down, Rinko had asked his friend about Takeo. Seeing all the evidence, Takeo still couldn't accept it. He couldn't believe that Rinko would give up someone better, like his friend, and choose him. His friend then admitted that he had never accepted any confession because he didn't want a girl who would talk bad about his friend behind his back. This moved Takeo to the point of tears. Just then, Takeo's mother suddenly entered, saying that Rinko wanted to visit. To prove a point, his friend told Takeo to hide under the bed. Once Rinko entered, she immediately poured her heart out to his friend, saying she was afraid the person she liked might be interested in guys and didn't know what to do. His friend, calm as ever, asked her if, even so, she couldn't still try to win him over with her own charm. But Rinko shook her head, saying that when Takeo spoke with her, all the conversations were about his friend. She was afraid there was no space for her at all, yet she couldn't bring herself to give up. She worried she might never meet someone like him again. The friend, like a concerned older brother, finally told Rinko to confess out loud right then and there. Takeo climbed out from under the bed. At that moment, he faced his feelings seriously for the first time. Standing in front of Rinko, he realized that in the eyes of someone who loves you, the world seems to glow on its own, and fate itself seemed to quietly close the script it had mistakenly picked up. To thank her friend, Rinko made a 3-tier cake and enthusiastically offered to help him find a partner. He gently declined, saying that compared to his own happiness, he would rather see his friend happy. Takeo suddenly remembered a play they had acted in as children, the story of the Red Ogre and the Blue Ogre. The Red Ogre was kind but rejected by others, while the Blue Ogre chose to leave, only to protect his friend's happiness. At that moment, wasn't the friend in front of him exactly like the Blue Ogre? The friend simply said that some people are born to help others shine. Takeo lost control of his emotions for the first time. Tears spilled out uncontrollably, and he pulled Makoto into a tight embrace. Only then did Takeo realize that this person had always been standing behind him, watching over him with the gentlest gaze. Maybe this was the purest kind of bond between men. The next day on his way to school, Takeo saw a mother struggling to push a stroller up the stairs. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and took hold of it. In no time, he had carried the heavy stroller onto the platform. The mother instantly became alert, as if sensing danger. Makoto quickly stepped in to explain that Takeo was only trying to help and meant no harm. Reassured by Makoto's gentle demeanor, the mother finally relaxed. It was clear that some people can put others at ease simply through their presence, and Takeo himself was not one of them. That day, Rinko had prepared Japanese sweets especially for Takeo and didn't forget Makoto either. Takeo ate attentively, though his eyes kept drifting toward Rinko. She wore a shy yet satisfied smile, and it felt as if the whole spring was wrapped in sweetness. On the way home, Rinko suggested taking a group photo to use as her phone's lock screen, but Takeo's face took up most of the frame. No matter how they tried, it looked awkward. As they kept adjusting, Takeo's heartbeat grew faster. He was standing too close to Rinko, so close that even breathing felt clumsy, and the feeling left him flustered. Just then, Rinko's phone rang. She answered naturally and said she was with her boyfriend. That single sentence filled Takeo with a deep sense of security. For the first time, he felt that being in love could feel this steady and reassuring. Later, Rinko mentioned that most of her friends were single and wanted to organize a mixer. She asked Takeo if he could invite some friends. He agreed without hesitation. Friends were something he never lacked. When the news spread that Takeo was no longer single, everyone grew excited. He was pushed into the center of the group, and the discussion quickly turned into who would get to attend the event. A group of single friends argued endlessly and eventually had to decide in the most primitive way possible. Makoto was also dragged onto the list. Even though he didn't want to join, Takeo forced him along anyway. Takeo looked forward to the gathering, thinking he might meet a nice girl, while Makoto had already seen through everything. On the day of the mixer, Rinko's friends surrounded her with questions, eager to know who the boyfriend she talked about every day really was. When they learned it was the burly Takeo, the room fell silent, and an awkward tension filled the air. In the elevator, Rinko tripped over some clutter. Takeo reacted instantly and steadied her. When heavy objects blocked the way, he moved them aside on his own. Without tools, he even twisted open bottle caps with his bare hands. In terms of action, he was flawless, but in the eyes of some, none of that mattered. Their attention remained fixed on Makoto. Even though he stayed quiet the entire time, his natural appeal was impossible to ignore. The dinner ended quickly. Two girls went to the restroom together and didn't come back for a long time. Rinko began to feel uneasy and decided to look for them. Takeo followed, worried. At the corner of the hallway, they overheard words they were never meant to hear, full of malice and completely unhidden. In that moment, Takeo finally understood Makoto's earlier warning. Not everyone who stands beside a good girl has good intentions. Rinko trembled with anger. She tried to defend Takeo but lost control of her emotions and ran out. With his physical advantage, Takeo quickly caught up. Rinko cried and apologized, repeatedly expressing guilt over her friend's behavior. Takeo blamed no one. Instead, he thanked her for always praising him in front of others. Compared to wounded pride, he couldn't bear Rinko's tears. In that moment, Takeo's charm quietly surfaced. Rinko realized that perhaps she hadn't explained him clearly enough and decided to go back and tell her friends about Takeo's good qualities again. Just as they reached downstairs, the place where the gathering had been suddenly caught fire, and the flames spread rapidly. The two girls who had spoken cruelly were now trapped inside. The crowd fled in panic, but Takeo didn't retreat. He grabbed a bucket of water and poured it over himself, told everyone to stay put, and then rushed into the flames. The door lock was jammed by the heat, and he smashed it open with his arm. He soon found an unconscious girl on the floor, hoisted her up, and carried her out without hesitation. After being rescued, Rinko said she only remembered being pulled out by an overwhelming force, but the danger wasn't over. Takeo went back in again. Another girl was trapped in a corner, kneeling on the ground and breaking down over her own words. As Takeo moved toward her, an air conditioner unit fell from the ceiling. He stepped in front of her, took the impact with his body, and told her to run. Takeo was pinned down by the heavy debris. Faced with such a situation, most people would give up, and Takeo was no different. As his consciousness faded, he thought about how his life had become happier than ever since meeting Rinko. If he could come this far just to protect her smile, then his life had not been lived in vain. At that critical moment, the phone beside him rang. It was Makoto. He told Takeo that the two people he had saved were out of danger, but Rinko was in terrible shape. When Makoto learned that Takeo was still trapped inside, he lost control and insisted on rushing in to save him. Rinko's sobbing voice came through the phone in broken fragments. Makoto anxiously asked if Takeo could come back right now. Takeo's heart was torn to its limit. In that instant, he seemed to turn into light. Even with flames still burning on his body, his first instinct was to hold the girl tightly in his arms. After the accident, everyone's view of Takeo changed completely. Some even mistook their admiration for attraction. The next day, on his way to school, Takeo saw three people taking up multiple seats on the subway. He didn't say a word, only showed his familiar expression, and they immediately left. At that moment, Takeo glanced to the side and unexpectedly saw Rinko waving at him. They reconnected at a place where their paths crossed again, as if fate had led them there. Despite the train being unstable, Takeo stayed by her side, firmly protecting her. The difference in their sizes was so obvious that passers-by assumed they were father and daughter. Yet, they continued to look at each other throughout the journey, until Rinko nearly missed her stop. In a critical moment, Takeo somehow pried open the train door with his bare hands, leaving just enough space for Rinko to squeeze through. He missed his stop in the process. A classmate happened to capture the moment and uploaded it to the class group. The boys praised Takeo, calling him a role model, while the girls couldn't understand how someone so outstanding could choose such a cute girlfriend. Amid the gossip, Takeo paid no attention. Instead of explaining, he chose to focus on more important things. At that moment, Takeo saw a mother frantically near the water. Her child had fallen in. Without hesitation, Takeo jumped in and saved the child using his impressive swimming skills. When the mother thanked him, Takeo didn't linger because he was running late. He had an appointment to keep. When Rinko saw Takeo drenched in water, she wondered why he didn't go home to change. Takeo replied earnestly that he had made a promise and couldn't let Rinko wait alone. Makoto didn't say anything, silently enduring the sweetness of the situation. Makoto then handed Takeo a takeaway. When Takeo changed in front of Rinko, he surprisingly felt shy. As Takeo ate the cake Rinko made, he looked at her gentle smile and gently placed his hand on her head. The atmosphere turned awkward, but the next second, Takeo simply greeted her. Rinko's mood visibly dropped. When it was time to part, Makoto waved and left, leaving only the two of them. Rinko suggested taking a walk in the park under the night sky, constantly hinting that it was just the two of them now. Takeo noticed her shy expression and seemed to sense something, but his obliviousness still made people anxious. Makoto had no idea that his sister had already fallen for Takeo. Her feelings ran so deep that she couldn't escape. AI originally planned to confess after Takeo went to college but didn't expect the story to end before it even started. Yet, she didn't give up. AI was convinced that Takeo had been deceived. After all, in her view, no one would like someone like Takeo, an unkempt gorilla, except herself. AI insisted on meeting Rinko, but Makoto refused. The next day, Takeo was on his way to the date when he unknowingly became the target of AI's tracking. When she saw Rinko in person, she was stunned. Rinko was so cute that people couldn't help but like her. The three finally met, and AI's strong interference broke the bubble of Takeo and Rinko's world. When AI found out that Rinko could make snacks, her attitude softened. AI took a bite, but the snack was too salty to swallow. Rinko realized she had mixed up the sugar and salt and hurriedly apologized, trying to take the snack back. Takeo, however, extended his hand and said he had no dietary restrictions, willing to accept it whether sweet or salty. As Takeo ate seriously, Rinko breathed a sigh of relief. AI then asked Takeo Takeo what he liked about Rinko. Without hesitation, Takeo answered that it was Rinko's purity, but this made Rinko feel disappointed. AI noticed this subtle detail. When it was time to say goodbye that night, Rinko didn't speak. Takeo sensed something was wrong but couldn't figure it out. The next day, after school, Takeo purposely went to a bookstore to study the inner world of girls. This scene was accidentally witnessed by AI. AI reminded Takeo that Rinko might be hiding something. Takeo just smiled. To him, what mattered wasn't guessing but helping her with whatever was troubling her. Eventually, with tears in her eyes, Rinko confessed the truth. She admitted she was attracted to Takeo, not only for his personality but also his appearance, broad shoulders, a solid build, even his flaws became charming. Rinko shyly admitted she couldn't stop overthinking, but Takeo replied seriously that until she truly grew up, he would never cross the line. In Takeo's heart, Rinko was still that pure person, and Rinko understood that she also longed to be embraced, cherished, and truly close. Rinko couldn't say what was on her mind, fearing it might make Takeo uncomfortable. At that moment, AI remembered what Takeo had said to her in the bookstore. He had told her he was just a slow, honest guy who was often misunderstood, but if anyone asked for help, he would do everything he could. AI suddenly realized and decided to go to Takeo's house immediately. She started recalling why she liked Takeo. When she was young, there was an ugly statue on the school playground. She was tall and thin, often mocked by her classmates, who said she resembled that ugly statue. Slowly, she lost her confidence as a girl. Then, one day after 6th grade, she met Takeo. He pointed to something next to him and said it resembled her. AI thought he was referring to the ugly statue, but in reality, Takeo was pointing at a bouquet of flowers next to the flower shop. Although Takeo didn't know the name of the flowers, to him, AI was as beautiful as that bouquet. From that moment on, AI regained her confidence and began to like Takeo. It became her most cherished memory. One day, AI and Makoto ran into Takeo on their way home. Takeo was rescuing a cat stuck in a tree. Makoto told Takeo that Rinko was crying and running towards his house. Takeo immediately put the cat down and rushed home, running so fast that even a bicycle couldn't catch up. Finally, he met Rinko at the end of the road. He comforted her, saying that whatever the problem was, he was willing to listen. That night, Takeo went to Makoto's house and asked Makoto for help. Takeo explained that he had problems when holding Rinko's hand for the first time. To avoid clashing teeth the next time they kissed, he wanted to practice beforehand. Makoto was helpless and suggested Takeo practice with a pillow, but Takeo said he had already tried that, and it wasn't accurate enough. He thought he needed a real person to practice with, and Makoto was the one he trusted most. Makoto's sacrifice seemed too big. The next day, after school, Takeo and the girl were about to go on a date when two men jumped out of the bushes. They aggressively walked toward Takeo. Everyone thought they were troublemakers, but the next second, the two men knelt down and asked Takeo for help. Without hesitation, Takeo agreed. Makoto questioned Takeo for agreeing without asking details, but Takeo felt that a man's knees had gold beneath them. Seeing their sincerity, how could he refuse? It turned out that these two men were members of the judo club, and their main player was injured, urgently needing Takeo to help with the competition. Takeo immediately decided to train for a month, but Makoto reminded him that this meant he wouldn't see Rinko for a month. They didn't realize it until it was too late to regret, but Rinko supported Takeo. She looked forward to his brilliant performance in the competition. Training began. Takeo's perseverance and determination inspired those around him. He trained tirelessly from morning until night. One night, when Takeo was coming home, he saw Rinko waiting for him. She told him she had secretly watched his training and thought he looked very handsome when serious. She even made rice balls for him to reward him. He told his girlfriend not to come looking for him there. He only wanted to keep her safe, but she misunderstood. She thought he did not want her to come, and that idea quietly hurt her. One day, Rinko went to see Makoto. She was carrying a big bag of heart-shaped cookies, but she did not dare give them to Takeo. She was afraid Takeo disliked her. She believed he was upset because she had secretly watched his training. Makoto firmly told her that it was all a misunderstanding. He encouraged her to talk things through with Takeo the next time they met. As they looked up at the night sky together, they imagined what Takeo would become. When the day of the competition finally arrived, Takeo stood face to face with an opponent known as the strongest judo fighter in the village. The two were set for a serious showdown. However, the moment the opponent saw Takeo's girlfriend, his confidence took a heavy blow. Still, he laughed loudly and told Takeo that someone who did not take training seriously could never defeat a national champion like him. The tension between them was obvious. Some people watching even felt the match might not be necessary, since jealousy alone seemed enough to break the challenger. The judo match officially began. Even though the teams were well prepared, the score ended up tied at 2-2. That meant the final outcome depended entirely on the match between Takeo and his opponent. Rinko prayed silently from the sidelines. The opponent slapped his swollen cheeks with his palm and forced himself to calm down. He told himself that he would never allow Takeo to outshine him in front of Rinko. He adjusted his stance and prepared to fight, but Takeo stood before him like an unmovable mountain. In that moment, an invisible pressure weighed heavily on him. He kept pushing himself mentally. As an athlete who had devoted his entire life to judo, he could not accept losing to someone who had stepped away from strict training. Once the match began, both fighters were extremely cautious. Every move required total focus, since even the smallest mistake could mean defeat. Then Takeo seized a brief opening and executed a clean, powerful back throw, slamming his opponent to the mat and winning the match. The opponent stood there in shock and disbelief. He could not understand how someone who seemed so laid back could unleash such overwhelming strength. Only when he noticed Takeo's solid muscles did he finally realize the truth. The one who had been arrogant and foolish all along was himself. The members of the judo club erupted in cheers for Takeo's victory. Rinko's eyes sparkled with affection. She felt proud of Takeo's strong body, and every time he held her hand, she became so excited she almost felt dizzy. The three of them later walked together under the stars. Rinko pointed at the sky and said that if certain stars were connected, she could see Takeo's shape. Takeo, however, felt that the stars were just like Rinko's smile, warm and bright no matter how long he looked. Watching their interaction, Makoto thought to himself that maybe it was time for him to fall in love too. The next day, Takeo went on another date with Rinko, and they were both happy. Suddenly, Makoto left without much explanation. Takeo sensed that something was off about him. Rinko guessed that Makoto might be feeling lonely. After all, Takeo had been spending nearly all his time with her lately, and Makoto might feel left out. She generously suggested inviting Makoto to join them on her birthday. Takeo was deeply touched and thought Rinko was truly an angel. The following day, Takeo went to find Makoto to invite him to Rinko's birthday celebration, but Makoto declined, saying he had other things to take care of. Takeo noticed the worry on Makoto's face and understood there was more behind it, but he chose not to ask. Even though Makoto could not come, he still helped Takeo plan the entire day, including places they used to visit together as kids. Takeo stayed enthusiastic, and seeing his happiness made Makoto genuinely glad for him. Then Makoto asked an important question. What gift was Takeo planning to give Rinko for her birthday? Takeo suddenly realized he had completely forgotten about that. As a student, he did not have extra money to buy a present. Makoto offered to lend him some, but Takeo felt that would lack sincerity. He decided instead to earn the money himself through part-time work. The next day, Takeo found a heavily revised schedule on his desk, along with a stack of detailed job listings. His heart felt warm as he realized Makoto had stayed up late preparing all of it for him. Determined not to let Makoto down, Takeo carefully chose a job and eventually found work at a tea shop that catered to fitness enthusiasts. Nearly every customer seemed drawn to his strong build. That night, when Takeo returned home, his mother told him that Makoto's father had been hospitalized. Takeo immediately understood why Makoto had seemed troubled lately. He rushed to find Makoto, but Makoto acted relaxed and said his father was fine and that he could handle everything himself. Only then did Takeo realize that Makoto had been hiding the truth so Takeo could enjoy a perfect birthday celebration. After hearing this, Takeo decided that no matter what, he would stand by Makoto through this difficult time. Makoto, however, became serious. He felt that if Takeo gave up the birthday plans he had carefully prepared and chose to stay with him instead, it would not make him happy. It was the first time Takeo had seen Makoto so firm, and in the end, he respected his decision. Later, Takeo learned from his mother that Makoto's father had long suffered from heart problems and had collapsed once when Makoto was young. Back then, Makoto had stayed silent too. Takeo quietly resolved to make sure Rinko would have a truly happy birthday. Early the next morning, Takeo waited at the subway entrance, only to discover that Rinko had arrived an hour early. When she saw Takeo, she thought she was late and rushed to apologize. Takeo quickly reassured her and said he had just arrived as well. When he saw how carefully she had dressed up, a feeling of indescribable joy filled his heart. It was one of those small but precious moments that only happen in love. Takeo then took out the route map Makoto had prepared. Rinko leaned in curiously but nervously tried not to let Takeo see too much. In her heart, she was determined to give Takeo the happiest birthday ever. Their first stop was a bowling alley, and Takeo did not disappoint. With a relaxed throw, he scored a perfect strike. Seeing his calm confidence, Rinko wanted to try too, but her strength was far too little, and the ball barely moved. Takeo just laughed and joked that maybe the bowling ball was fake. After Rinko praised him, Takeo got so excited that he started showing off with exaggerated moves, his eyes practically glowing. His antics drew everyone's attention. The two then took photos together, and Rinko happily posted them on social media, eager to show everyone how amazing her boyfriend was. Watching her joyful smile, Takeo silently promised himself that he would always protect it and keep her happy. At noon, they went to a famous cake shop. Rinko was thrilled. She had always wanted to eat cake there, but the prices were so high that she never dared to come. Takeo told her openly that he worked part-time just to see her smile more. While eating, Rinko curiously asked about Makoto. She could not understand why someone as gentle as him had never had a girlfriend. Takeo covered his mouth and laughed quietly, feeling lucky that he had met Rinko when he did. Her words made him blush. At that moment, the staff brought out a cake and warmly celebrated Rinko's birthday. This was another surprise Makoto had arranged in advance. Rinko was so happy she did not know what to do. When making her wish, she confessed out loud that she hoped every birthday in the future could be spent with Takeo. Hearing such a direct confession, Takeo felt his face grow hot. Only then did he truly realize how sweet love could be. After that, the two held hands and slowly walked through a small park. Rinko praised both Takeo and Makoto for being so thoughtful, amazed at how much effort they had put into preparing for her birthday. Takeo, when suddenly, he let go of her hand. He handed her the planned itinerary and tickets, leaving Rinko confused and unsure of what was going on. Takeo was silent for a moment before finally speaking. He had to go with his friend Makoto because Makoto's father was about to undergo surgery. Although Makoto had insisted that Takeo stay with Rinko to celebrate her birthday, Takeo decided to go to the hospital and support Makoto during this difficult time. Takeo thought Rinko would be disappointed, but to his surprise, she understood. She believed Takeo had to be with Makoto for such an important matter, and she would continue to enjoy her birthday as planned. Seeing Takeo still standing there, she urged him to leave. Takeo smiled gently, handed her a carefully prepared gift, and quickly left for the hospital. Rinko's concern and understanding gave Takeo the strength he needed. Once at the hospital, Takeo rushed to find a nurse and asked for the location of the operating room. The nurse nervously told him that it was on the 3rd floor, which confused Takeo. As he saw the flashing red lights of the surgery sign, his mood grew heavier. Takeo stood there, thinking that Makoto had probably known all along that Takeo would sacrifice their day to be there for for him. His heart was filled with gratitude and guilt. At that moment, Makoto's father had just finished surgery. Takeo learned that Makoto had kept a secret from him. Makoto's father had congenital heart disease and had always feared passing it on to the next generation. A few days ago, when Makoto came home after his mother and sister went on a trip, he found his father collapsed on the floor and rushed into the hospital. This was the second surgery, and it was critical. Makoto blamed himself for not being home in time. Takeo understood Makoto's dilemma. Makoto hadn't wanted to hide the truth but didn't know how to bring it up. When the surgery lights turned off, and the doctor came out, Takeo hurriedly asked about the outcome. The doctor informed him that the surgery had been very successful, and the father's condition could be managed with medication. Makoto finally breathed a sigh of relief, and his mother and sister arrived soon after. Everything was stable. Takeo decided to share this good news with Rinko. When he returned to the waiting area, he found that Rinko had been waiting there for a long time, with thousands of paper cranes placed on her lap. Rinko smiled and told Takeo that she had planned to follow the schedule, but out of concern for him, she decided to come here. Despite the disrupted date, she was still happy because they had done so much for her. This birthday had become the most meaningful one for her. Makoto, watching this warm scene, couldn't help but think how nice it was. Takeo and Rinko shared a smile and suddenly realized that Makoto, too, might have expectations for love. Rinko joked that Makoto must have a secret crush on Takeo, and they proposed to post a confession on the school's confession wall. Takeo agreed, thinking Makoto was a good man who would surely be loved. That way, the four of them could go on a date together. The next day, to make up for leaving her on her birthday, Takeo organized a picnic and invited Rinko. Though it was just a picnic, it felt like a mountain hike. Takeo felt a bit uneasy, as he hadn't discussed the plan with Makoto beforehand. He worried that Rinko might find it inconvenient, but seeing her excited expression, he realized everything wasn't as bad as he had imagined. When they reached the top of the mountain and were ready to start the picnic, suddenly an eagle swooped down and grabbed Rinko's takeaway. Rinko quickly grabbed onto the takeaway and struggled with the eagle, but in the process, she lost her footing and almost fell off the cliff. Takeo saw this and rushed forward, grabbing Rinko and securing the backpack. With a quick move, he managed to prevent Rinko from falling and steadied himself as well. Despite Takeo's swift actions, they ended up getting stranded in the forest, and their phones lost signal. This turned their first picnic into an unexpected adventure. Takeo had an idea and decided to climb a tree to get a better view. As expected, he heard car horns in the distance. Although it was far, they might have to wait until the next day to return to the city, but at least they knew there was hope for rescue. Takeo decided to camp out in the forest for the night. Rinko, full of anticipation, was particularly touched when Takeo promised to protect her and her heart sword. To ensure she didn't wander off, Takeo asked her to hold his hand. As Rinko grabbed his hand, Takeo became more focused, even cutting grass with extra effort. As they prepared for their picnic, Takeo's stomach suddenly growled. Fortunately, Rinko had a lunchbox in her backpack, and they were able to enjoy the picnic. However, Takeo only ate half and said he was full, telling Rinko to save the rest for later. Rinko couldn't help but start to worry. Time passed, and by evening, Takeo suggested they camp here. Rinko had already prepared for it, gathering dry leaves to make a mattress and setting up a simple bed with the picnic blanket. However, none of this escaped the attention of Rinko's friends, who, hearing that Rinko hadn't returned home that night, began imagining sweet moments between Rinko and Takeo in the forest. They even prepared an alibi for her parents and planned to share this mysterious experience when Rinko returned. After dinner, it was already late, and the forest was silent, pitch black around them. Rinko felt that the atmosphere was perfect for their relationship to progress, but unexpectedly, Takeo misunderstood her feelings. He suddenly took her hand, causing Rinko to feel a strange tingling sensation all over her body. Before she could react, a wild boar suddenly rushed out of the bushes, charging toward Rinko. Takeo instinctively stood in front of her, taking the brunt of the boar's force. Despite the boar's powerful charge, Takeo easily threw it aside. Rinko was so shocked that she almost collapsed. Hearing about the boar's appearance, she nearly fainted again. Takeo quickly embraced her, assuring her that even if a bear appeared, he would never let her come to harm. Rinko's face flushed, and just then, the moon emerged from behind the clouds, casting light on their figures. Takeo was happy because now Rinko wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. He told her to lie down and rest. Rinko was excited inside. She smiled and said that even if they were stuck in the mountains forever, she would still feel happy. As night fell, Takeo soon fell asleep, snoring softly. The next morning, Takeo woke up and immediately noticed something was wrong. He quickly searched for Rinko but was relieved to find her still sleeping by his side. She rubbed her eyes and gave him a sweet smile, and Takeo felt a weight lift off his chest. To his surprise, they were surrounded by a group of small animals, evidently drawn to Takeo's protective aura. The two of them finally made their way out of the forest and found the road leading back to the city. Takeo asked if Rinko was injured, and once he confirmed she was fine, he started to relax. However, when he saw the mosquito bites on her legs, he immediately felt guilty for not protecting her better. As they prepared to take the bus back, Rinko suddenly realized her phone had signal again and decided to check in with her family. To her surprise, she saw an email from her friend, telling her she needed to be taught a lesson for cheating. Rinko then planned a trip to the beach with Takeo and, wanting to catch his attention, carefully picked out a swimsuit. But when her friends saw it, they couldn't couldn't help but be speechless at how revealing it was. Rinko laughed, saying this was the only way to make Takeo's heart race. After all, he used to always chase after her, and now she wanted him to fall for her. Meanwhile, Takeo was getting ready for the beach trip, carrying a lot of luggage to Makoto's house. After getting stranded in the mountains last time, he was determined to be fully prepared this time. Suddenly, Takeo received a call from Rinko. She told him there would be a typhoon that night, and Takeo immediately started worrying about the weather the next day. Rinko comforted him, teasing that he was a lucky guy when it came to love, and insisted that tomorrow would definitely be sunny. She even made a little sunshine doll modeled after Takeo and hung it by the window, wishing for good weather. Sure enough, even though the forecast warned of a typhoon, the next morning was bright and sunny. Everyone happily began looking forward to the beach trip, and Rinko could hardly wait to show off her swimsuit. The moment Takeo saw Rinko, he suddenly realized the beach could be this captivating. He couldn't help staring at her for a long time, nearly forgetting that he was there to have fun. When Rinko noticed his gaze, she became so shy she almost fainted. Luckily, Makoto stepped in just in time and reminded Takeo that it was time to change into his swimsuit. Takeo snapped back to his senses and quickly took off his outer clothes, revealing a solid, bronze-toned physique. Rinko was stunned, her heart racing, and she even felt the urge to pounce on him. Takeo felt the same way. When their eyes met, they were almost completely lost in each other. To keep his desires in check, Takeo decided to swim hard in the ocean, charging through the water like a crazed shark. Rinko laughed with hearts practically written all over her face, looking like Takeo's biggest fan. When it was time to smash the watermelon, Takeo spun around like a top without hesitation and confidently walked forward. Rinko watched his handsome back and instinctively stood up. Makoto, watching the scene, felt that Takeo and Rinko were genuinely happy. He blindfolded Takeo with a strip of cloth and whispered to him that Rinko was just wearing clothes suitable for swimming, not whatever wild images Takeo had in his head. Takeo snapped out of it, ripped off the blindfold, and instantly felt refreshed. Yet the moment he looked at Rinko again, it felt like she was the only person in the world. Makoto could only sigh and shake his head. Later, Takeo played throwing games with his classmates, and everyone loved the thrill of being tossed around by him. Seeing Rinko nearby, Takeo enthusiastically invited her to join in. Rinko became extremely shy, her mind filled with fantasies of close contact with Takeo, so excited she even let out little kitten-like sounds. Takeo saw right through her thoughts and handed her a life ring instead. Rinko awkwardly accepted it, and Takeo couldn't help smiling. Makoto stood nearby, watching the couple splash around in the water, and laughed out loud. In the end, Rinko decided to play with the kids instead, and everyone quickly blended into the joyful atmosphere. Takeo became the most popular person among the children. On the shore, two women quietly whispered to each other, commenting that Takeo's muscular body completely outshined their husbands. Rinko's heart started pounding again, worried that someone else might steal Takeo away. At lunchtime, everyone gathered in the cabin to eat. For some reason, Rinko's eyes kept drifting to Takeo's back. She stared absent-mindedly, lost in her thoughts, until a friend teased her and pointed out that she had corn stuck in her teeth. Embarrassed, Rinko quickly turned away, too shy to look at Takeo again. Thankfully, her friend handed her a cup of ice water, helping her calm down. Rinko smiled helplessly. She had planned to tease Takeo, but every time it mattered most, he made her heart race, leaving her unable to control her emotions. Her friend suggested that she get closer to Takeo, saying that might be enough to make him shy instead. Rinko thought it was a good idea and secretly made up her mind to make Takeo fall for her this time. As the waves gently lapped against the shore, Takeo's mood swayed along with the rhythm of the sea. He proudly claimed he was an expert at catching crabs and promised Rinko a big haul. Watching Takeo's strong back, Rinko's mind once again drifted to intimate images, making her feel deeply embarrassed. In a panic, she apologized and ran off. Takeo was confused and didn't understand what had happened. He hurried after her but accidentally stepped on and crushed their sandcastle. Just then, Makoto happened to pass by. Seeing the mess, he quietly took over fixing the sandcastle and urged Takeo to go after Rinko. Takeo finally found Rinko by the rocks. At that moment, it felt like he suddenly understood something. He quietly stayed by her side, watching the beautiful sunset. He let out a sigh of relief, because the whole point of this trip was to watch the sunset together with Rinko. Rinko seemed to feel the same way. She drew an umbrella on the sand, saying she wanted to become a broad-minded woman and hoped to stay by Takeo's side forever. The next day, Rinko invited Takeo on an ice skating date. Takeo had never skated before, but he was thrilled. After all, everyone has a first time. At first, he was feeling his way around, but to everyone's shock, when faced with the sudden challenge, Takeo pulled off a triple jump and a perfect backbend. Makoto couldn't help joking that watching Takeo was like fast-forwarding through human evolution. Meanwhile, Rinko practiced walking carefully on the ice, while Takeo played the role of her coach, helping her improve. Everyone praised Takeo's natural talent, even saying he could become a professional skater. Hearing this, Rinko blushed deeply, filled with pride. However, even someone as all-around as Takeo still had his weaknesses. His grades were always near the bottom of the class. When Rinko mentioned wanting to attend the same university as him, Takeo felt a pang of sadness. The school Rinko aimed for had a very high cutoff score, while Takeo's grades could only get him into a junior college. Not wanting to disappoint her, Takeo decided to study hard and change his situation. But the textbooks in front of him felt like they radiated some kind of dark dark magic, making him feel utterly powerless. In desperation, he knelt in front of Makoto and begged for help. Seeing Takeo's determination, Makoto was still a bit doubtful but agreed to give it a try. Takeo started studying seriously. Makoto gave him an English question, but Takeo's poor foundation made Makoto burst out laughing. Just as Takeo was about to give up, he received a message from Rinko saying she was willing to apply to other schools with him and that he didn't need to force himself. Takeo felt unwilling to accept that, firmly believing he could still get into the university of Rinko's dreams. That night, Rinko specially prepared chocolate and brought it to Takeo's house. Takeo's mother watched the two of them and sensed something unusual about their relationship. She found an excuse to send Takeo away and asked Rinko directly if she was Takeo's girlfriend. After getting a yes, Takeo's mother was overjoyed and even started imagining future grandchildren. Then she realized she should leave a good impression and hurried out to buy high-quality black tea. When Rinko found out, her face turned red, and she answered awkwardly. Makoto, watching the sweet couple from the side, could only sigh inwardly at how much they were showing off their love. When Takeo was about to start studying, his mother came in gently, handed Rinko a tea set, and told her to relax. Takeo was confused because he had never seen such an exquisite tea set before and wondered if his mother had just bought it. She even said that if Rinko got tired, she could rest there. Rinko quickly said she didn't plan to stay overnight. Takeo's mother sighed helplessly, feeling she hadn't prepared enough, and decided to save the toiletries for next time. That night, Takeo vaguely heard noises in his sleep. It turned out his mother was doing a deep clean late at night to welcome Rinko. Even his usually lazy father suddenly became meticulous, as if preparing for Rinko's arrival. While they were happily cleaning, the doorbell rang. When Rinko walked in and saw how spotless the house was, she almost thought she had come to the wrong place. When they finally sat down to study, Takeo's parents bombarded them with questions, making it impossible for him to concentrate. With no other choice, they ran off to Makoto's house to study instead. However, Makoto gave Takeo a difficult question. Why do men like to play the field? Rinko couldn't understand it either. She thought, how could a guy not know who he really likes? Makoto sighed and said that if there were two Takeos or two Rinkos in the world, maybe then they'd be unsure. After solving the problem, Takeo became so tired from studying that he fell asleep right there. Makoto, seeing how seriously Takeo was taking his studies, couldn't help but compliment his effort. It was the first time Makoto had ever seen Takeo work this hard, so he decided to make Takeo a cup of tea to help him wake up and keep going. At that moment, Rinko and Takeo were alone. Rinko quietly crawled over to Takeo's side and shared her true feelings with him. Time passed by quickly, and evening was approaching. Rinko had to go home. The room was left with just Takeo and Makoto, but of course, they weren't practicing kissing this time. Takeo suggested that maybe Makoto should consider applying to a university too. Makoto laughed and said he wouldn't lower his standards. Takeo still needed to keep working hard because education was the wisdom that set one's life on the right track. Soon, the mock exams arrived, and Takeo was full of confidence. Makoto and Rinko had already helped him review the key points, so during the exam, he felt like he had everything under control and answered the question smoothly. But when he reached the last question, he realized that he had filled out the answer sheet incorrectly. Takeo panicked. There were only 10 minutes left in the exam. He had to work quickly to fix the mistake. When Rinko saw Takeo sweating, she thought he had just gone through a battle. When the exam results came out, Takeo was shocked. He didn't even score well enough to get into the university Rinko dreamed of. Takeo was devastated and sat dejectedly in a corner, dialing Rinko's number. He told her he was too dumb and couldn't get into the university she wanted. Rinko comforted him warmly, telling him not to push himself too hard. They could both work hard to get into a university with a lower entrance requirement. Though Takeo was still reluctant, he knew he couldn't give up. Takeo's birthday was coming up, and on winter solstice, Rinko decided to create a memorable experience for him. In the morning, Rinko took Takeo to a shrine, and they drew a fortune for the New Year's blessing. Luckily, both of them got good fortunes, predicting good luck for the year ahead. Rinko suggested having lunch at Takeo's house, as she had made a cake that she wanted Takeo to try. Takeo took Rinko home to meet his parents. When Takeo saw the messy room, he hurriedly started cleaning, and Rinko offered to help. The atmosphere between them became increasingly subtle. At that moment, Takeo's mother came in, telling him that she was going to the department store to buy groceries and wouldn't be back for at least 5 hours. She told Takeo he could do whatever he wanted at home. Rinko seemed to sense something from her words and became shy. Then, the doorbell rang. It was Takeo's elementary school friend bringing birthday wishes. They chatted for a long time, and by sunset, Takeo had to say goodbye. Now, time was running out for Rinko, so she quickly took out the gift she had carefully chosen for Takeo, a small bear that made a noise. She hoped Takeo would like it. The little bear seemed to stir Takeo's youthful heart, and Rinko had also made a beautiful cake by hand. When Takeo blew out the candles and made a wish, Rinko seized the opportunity to quietly lean in and gave him her first kiss. After a long time, Rinko shyly sat back. Takeo opened his eyes and saw Rinko, blushing and awkward, but then dropped a bombshell that shocked her. It turned out that her first kiss had been given to Takeo like this, and because Takeo's lips were so thick, she barely felt anything. After Takeo sent Rinko home, he went to Makoto's house, as usual, to express his feelings about the birthday. He told Makoto that Rinko's cheesecake was the best he had ever had, and it was the happiest birthday he had ever experienced. But then Takeo mentioned something strange. He had never heard that kissing could feel like being bitten by bugs. Makoto laughed, saying Takeo might have really been kissed by Rinko. Connecting it with Rinko's earlier shy expressions, Takeo suddenly realized that it wasn't the feeling of being bitten by bugs, it was the most precious gift Rinko had bravely given him. Takeo immediately ran out of the house, wearing a short-sleeved shirt, and ran through the snow, just to see her again before she went to bed. Rinko, on the other hand, finally understood everything in her heart and was moved by Takeo's feelings. One day, Rinko had her first part-time job. She was mesmerized by a pastry chef named Cookie as he made cakes. His skillful hands and delicate craftsmanship made her feel like they were works of art. After work, she went to the kitchen to observe him, her eyes shining. Cookie handed her a spoon to taste the cake, and Rinko praised it, but asked him why he didn't sell them. Cookie seemed deeply moved by her words. It turned out that he was so proud of his cakes that he couldn't bear the thought of selling any leftover ones. For him, that would be a huge disgrace. Seeing his inner conflict, Rinko offered to buy any leftover cakes herself. Cookie was touched by her kindness and started listening to her more seriously. As Rinko enthusiastically promoted the cakes, Cookie gradually became interested in her. After work, he took the initiative to ask her name, and Rinko smiled brightly and told him. In Japan, calling someone by their name is a sign of intimacy, and while standing outside, Takeo watched the two of them talking, suddenly feeling inferior. He thought Cookie was handsome, drove an expensive car, and Rinko seemed to admire him. Takeo looked at Rinko's happy expression and suddenly felt like giving up. He didn't understand what Rinko had been through lately or what was going on in her mind. Rinko noticed that Takeo was acting strangely, but he just kept his head down, silent. The next day, Takeo and Makoto went to Rinko's shop to buy cake. Makoto noticed that Cookie's eyes were fixed on Rinko, which made him a little uneasy. After they left, Cookie directly asked Rinko if the two guys were her friends. When she nodded, he immediately stopped working and rushed out. Cookie began listing reasons why he was more suitable for Rinko than Takeo. He had a house, a car, and was good looking. They shared common interests, while Takeo and Rinko were together just because he had once saved her. Cookie advised Takeo to give up and sarcastically said that guys like him were more suited to dating women who looked like gorillas or bears. Takeo refused to back down and said he would never give up on Rinko. Cookie stated that he would pursue her his way, through winning the pastry chef competition. Takeo didn't argue and even found some truth in what Cookie said. Later, it suddenly started raining heavily. Takeo realized that Rinko didn't have an umbrella, so he rushed to grab one and headed straight to the cake shop. However, just as he was about to arrive, he saw Rinko chatting happily in Cookie's car. Takeo stood in shock on the street, letting the rain hit him. Despite feeling disappointed, he decided to bless Rinko and Cookie, because for him, as long as Rinko was happy, that was enough. When Takeo returned home, Makoto was shocked by his appearance, but Takeo insisted he was fine. Although Makoto didn't say anything, he could sense Takeo's emotional turmoil. After Takeo took a shower, Rinko called him. She told him that she had seen him standing in the street and thanked him for his past help. Takeo firmly denied it, saying he wasn't there and that she must have mistaken him for someone else. Rinko sighed in relief, thinking maybe she was just missing Takeo too much and had imagined it. She invited Takeo to go to the park with her the day after tomorrow. Hearing this, Takeo's heart raced, and he couldn't help but wonder if Rinko still liked him. The next day, Cookie, as a pastry chef, asked Rinko if she could help him think about a cake for a competition. Rinko couldn't find a reason to refuse, so she called Takeo to ask for his opinion. Though Takeo felt uncomfortable, he decided to support Rinko in helping Cookie. However, Takeo couldn't sleep all night, feeling very conflicted. The next day, Takeo went out with his classmates to relax, still wondering if he and Rinko were really meant to be. He asked his friends if they thought he and Rinko weren't a good match. Although they didn't fully understand his feelings, they all agreed that Takeo and Rinko were a perfect pair and encouraged him to be more confident. Takeo felt greatly encouraged and finally decided to confront his feelings. He ran toward the cake shop. Cookie made his intentions clear. He said openly that he would do whatever it took to win Rinko over, even if that meant taking her away from Takeo. The news filled Takeo with anger. It was not that he lacked emotion. He had simply grown used to keeping it buried. He kept asking himself why things had reached this point, whether he had failed her in some way, whether he could not give Rinko the future she truly wanted. The more he thought about it, the clearer one truth became. In many ways, he really was not as good as Cookie. Cookie was more ambitious and had clearer goals. He was thriving in his field and had a well-defined vision of the future. Takeo, on the other hand, felt stuck in place, working hard but never truly standing out. That realization left him frustrated and powerless. Even so, he told himself he would not give up on Rinko. He could accept losing, but he could not walk away without trying. When Cookie confronted him directly and laid out his plan, Takeo did not react with the intensity Cookie might have expected. Cookie said he would enter a pastry competition, win the championship, and then officially confess his feelings to Rinko. For Cookie, that stage meant everything. Takeo listened and stayed silent for a long time. He knew there was no point in stopping him. Feelings could not be forced or controlled. In the end, he chose to accept reality. He did not argue or mock Cookie. He calmly wished him well. Saying those words was not easy, but he chose dignity anyway. After that, he turned around and walked away without looking back. The day of the competition arrived quickly. Cookie was full of confidence. He had prepared for a long time and truly believed he would succeed. But just before the event began, he realized he had forgotten something crucial. His most important set of kitchen tools. Without them, he could not complete the dish he had planned. With time running out, he knew that going back for them would make him late. He began to hesitate and even considered giving up. That was when Rinko appeared. She did not blame him or rush him. She simply told him seriously not to give up. She reminded him how much he had sacrificed for this competition and said he could not let one mistake erase all of that. Because of her words, Cookie suddenly thought of Takeo. He called Takeo and explained the situation honestly, asking if Takeo could bring the tools over. His voice lacked confidence, and even he did not believe the request would actually work. 10 minutes, 20 kilometers. It was almost impossible. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Takeo agreed. He did not ask questions or hesitate. He only said he would do his best. Cookie did not expect much, but when Takeo really appeared at the very last moment and handed him the tools, he was completely stunned. Takeo looked exhausted. He offered no explanation. He simply passed the tools over and stepped aside, as if none of it had anything to do with him.
Okay, perhaps I don't. Yes! That's it. It's done.
Cookie completed the competition successfully. With an outstanding performance, he won the championship. In that moment, he earned the recognition he had longed for and reached the position he had dreamed of. But he did not stop there. In front of everyone, he chose to confess his feelings to Rinko. He believed it was his rightful chance and the most direct way to fight for love. Rinko was completely unprepared. She was thrown into confusion by Cookie's confession and did not know how to respond. Instinctively, she looked for Takeo, hoping to find some guidance in his eyes. But Takeo did nothing. He stood there calmly. He did not interrupt or stop anything. He knew that no matter the outcome, the choice had to belong to Rinko alone. He told himself that if Rinko chose Cookie in the end, he would respect her decision and sincerely wish her happiness. Because real love was not about possession, but about letting go. At that moment, Cookie finally realized how complicated the situation truly was.
I really want nothing but the best for you. And I'm always here for you. Because I love and respect all the things you create. But only one man has captured my heart. And without a doubt, that man is Takeo Goda!
The thing you feel the most, in your heart and your soul. The thing you can't quite understand.
He began to understand that winning the competition did not mean winning her heart. He saw Takeo's restraint, and he also saw Takeo's quiet resolve. In the end, he chose to admit defeat. He accepted the outcome willingly, stepped back, and wished Takeo and Rinko well. After everything was over, Rinko and Takeo began their journey home together. Only then did Rinko fully understand everything. She realized how much Takeo had been silently enduring. His anxiety, his insecurity, his restraint, and everything he had done for Cookie. All the things she had once overlooked came rushing back at once. She felt guilty and deeply moved.
I just knew I didn't want to give you to anyone else. Thank you for falling in love with me, Rinko.
Rinko stopped walking and turned around to hug Takeo. The movement was sudden and tight, as if she was afraid of losing something again. Takeo froze for a moment. Then he finally gathered the courage to softly call out her name. They leaned into each other without saying a word. The closeness felt unfamiliar at first, but inside, both of them were filled with a long-lost warmth and happiness.